Welcome again to the microbiology session of supplement tutorials. Today we're talking about introduction to microbiology. Before we continue, make sure you click on the like button and subscribe as well. So we'll start by talking about the basic concepts and theories of microbiology. So we'll talk about the theory of spontaneous generation. We'll talk about the theory of biogenesis. Then we'll talk about some experiments that were done by some scientists to support the theory of biogenesis. Okay, so let's start. So basically, microbiology is the study of how microorganisms affect biology or biological components of life. Somewhere around the Middle Age, there was nothing like microbiology. Most diseases were attributed to spirits, and then metaphysical causes or unknown causes. But as time goes on, there were basic concepts and theories that supported the claim that diseases are really caused by unseen organisms, which are known as microorganisms. So this whole trend started from the theory of spontaneous generation. In the theory of spontaneous generation, it is the idea that life arises spontaneously from non-living materials. So in the Middle Age, spontaneous generation was accepted, even by the famous scientist Aristotle, who was one of the proponents of spontaneous generation. He suggested that insects and other small organisms could rise spontaneously from water, mud, or decaying matter or refuse. So that was about the theory of spontaneous generation. So in the Middle Age, they believed that living things can come out from non-living things. This spontaneous generation is also known as abiogenesis. Abiogenesis. Okay. So somewhere along the line, new theories came up. The theory of biogenesis came up, and this theory of biogenesis was brought up by a scientist called Rudolf Virchow. And for that matter, he is known as the father of modern pathology. So Rudolf Virchow suggested a theory that life arises only from pre-existing life forms. And this was proposed by Rudolf Virchow in the year 1858. Okay, so after the Rudolf Virchow's proposal, there were experiments that supported his claim that life actually existed from pre-existing forms, or life arises from pre-existing forms. So one of the experiments other scientists conducted based on Rudolf Virchow's theory of biogenesis is one experiment conducted by Francisco Redi. So this is Francisco Redi. So Francisco Redi was one of the first people to test the theory of biogenesis. In experiments, he placed two meat in different jars, one covered and one uncovered. The uncovered one was exposed to houseflies and was steamed with maggots. For this experiment, he became the founder of experimental biology and the father of modern parasitology. So this was a simple experiment Francisco Redi conducted. He just placed two meats into jars. He left one covered and left one uncovered. He realized that the uncovered one was steamed or was filled with maggots, and thereby he suggested that when they were exposed to houseflies, he suggested that houseflies causes maggots. So that was one of the first experiments he did. and for this reason, he was known as the founder of experimental biology and the father of modern parasitology. So that is for Francisco Reda. Followed A follow-up experiment was conducted by Louis Jabulot, all on the theory of biogenesis. So Louis Jabulot reasoned that microscopic organisms might have parents. In his experiment, he warmed an infusion, one covered and one uncovered. After the experiment, he recorded a heavy microbial growth on the uncovered one and no microbial growth for the covered one. He concluded that dust particles in the air may contain certain organisms that leads to the microbial growth. So we can see that this Louis Jabulot's experiment is similar to that of Francisco Redi. Alright. But then the third experiment brought a little setback to the theory, to proving the theory of biogenesis. So John Needham, who was an English biologist, conducted an experiment and ended up failing the experiment. So his experiment conflicted with that of Louis Jabulot. So he conducted a similar experiments like Louis Jabulot, but this time around, both his heated and unheated cans or containers teemed with microorganisms. So the reason why, or suggested reason for his failure in experiments or for his failed experiments, is that he did not consider the concept of heat-resistant endospores. So as we move further, we realize that there are certain bacteria that are heat-resistant endospores, and they do not endure, or they endure the harsh conditions that is given by certain temperature or heat, and therefore can thrive in such arid condition. And he also didn't know the true method of sterilization. So there are certain bacteria that need specific temperature to clear them off or to kill them. All these ideas was not known by then. So therefore his experiment was a failure. So these three major experiments confirmed Rudolf Virchow's theory of biogenesis. Okay. And now the rise of microbiology. So after the theory of biogenesis was proved, a lot of scientists came to the knowledge of microbiology, and there was a rise in microbiology. So we have scientists like Zacharias Janssen, who was the first person to invent the compound microscope, which is one major contribution to microbiology. Then we have Anton van Leeuwenhoek. He is known as the father of microbiology, and he's the first to observe bacteria and protozoa under the microscope. So this is Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who is the first person to observe bacteria and protozoa under the microscope. Then we have Louis Pasteur. In fact, you cannot mention microbiology without mentioning Louis Pasteur. He's known as the father of modern microbiology, and he contributed a lot to microbiology. So Louis Pasteur, for instance, discovered what causes or what occurs during alcoholic fermentation. So he clarified that different types of bacteria are responsible for different fermentation processes. So that is one of Louis Pasteur's discovery. So Louis Pasteur was able to, for example, he was able to tell that yeast can convert glucose in grapes to ethanol or ethyl alcohol by fermentation. And then other bacteria like the Acetobacter can also convert the glucose to acetic acid or vinegar, which results in the sourness in alcohol, fermented or sport alcohol. So it was Louis Pasteur who brought about this discovery. And secondly, he discovered that forms of life could exist in the absence of oxygen, introducing the term anaerobic. So anytime you hear the word anaerobic, it comes from Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur was the one who was able to coin this term, anaerobic. He also discovered a process called pasteurization. So this one you can realize he named it after himself, pasteurization, to kill microbes that were causing food spoilage. So in the pasteurization process, he either gives a sharp increase in temperature for a short period of time to kill microorganisms, or maintain the temperature but prolong the pasteurization process or the sterilization process. He also made significant contribution in the germ theory. We'll talk about the germ theory in future videos. And then he developed vaccines to cure chicken cholera. And he also developed vaccines to cure anthrax. So Louis Pasteur is one of the real bugs in microbiology, especially modern microbiology. And then we move on to this man, Robert Koch. In fact, this man too is a legend. He actually made significant contribution to the germ theory. He made significant contribution to the germ theory. And then he proved that anthrax bacilli was really the cause of anthrax. He also helped in the development of fixing, staining, and photographing bacteria. So when we talked about fixing, how to preserve bacteria, how to give color to bacteria, that is staining, and then the bacteria photography. So it was Robert Koch who was responsible for all this, and this contribution has helped microbiologists even up to date. He also developed the method of culturing bacteria. Okay. So most method that we know about the culture of bacteria is as a result of this man, Robert Koch. One of his colleagues too, R.J. Petrie, discovered what we called the Petri dish. Okay. So we could realize that between Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch came a whole lot of modern tools that microbiologists, modern phenomenons, and modern tools that microbiologists use up to date. So they really made significant contribution to the field of microbiology. So this is just an introduction to microbiology. In our future videos, we'll talk about the germ theory. Then we'll talk about the concept of contagion as well. Thank you for joining this session. If you really enjoyed this video, kindly tap on the comment section and write a comment, and also subscribe. Thank you very much.